actually wore my first slippers when I went to secondary school. When you are going to primary school, then you can have some shorts around your waist, but bare-chested running around, throwing stones and climbing trees. Yeah, so that was my youth.
What's your best meal?
Oh my, I'm a Dagomba man, so my toes are filled with dry okra soup would always be number one.
Do you remember the meeting you had that led you to Stanbic?
You know, I was invited over to Simon Street, where Standard Bank has their head office buildings, and we had coffee, and then they told me, no, they wanted me to, consider joining Standard Bank.
Hello there, and welcome to another episode of The Lowdown here on Ghanaweb TV. My name is Echi Atisu. Today we have a personality profile of a man who, in many respects, especially within the economic world, is someone who knows it all. He's been through the ranks. He's served at various levels of the ladder when it comes to the economic sector of this country. Now, Dr. Alhassan Andani is our guest on The Lowdown. These days, we talk a lot about the economy. Maybe we'll learn a thing or two from this conversation. Now, Doctor, thank you, sir, for
Thank you very much.
The opportunity. How have you been, sir?
Doing well, keeping well.
Yes, and we don't get to see you a lot these days because we know very recently you went on retirement.
That's true.
Yes.
And,
how is retirement? If I could describe it as such, how is that treating you?
Well, I actually don't call it retirement. I say retrying. I'm retrying other things, finding new interests, and lots of it.
Okay.
So yeah, it's been busy. At least I say now, well, I have my own destiny in my own hands. Okay. So yeah, it's quite enjoyable.
I see.
I say.
Those are the kinds of. So I imagine you've been into a number of things. You're doing your own thing now, and you say now you have your own freedom. Is that what it is?
Well, when I say freedom, look, when you are working in corporate life, it's very prescriptive. Basically, when to come to work and when to go home, what to do and what not to do, and all of that. Yeah, all of that, builds your personality, builds your character, and all of that. But where I am, I choose, what to do, and what contributions to make, and So at the moment, I ran or founded the LVS Africa, which is an enterprise development firm. It's always been my interest to deal and solve corporate problems, particularly dealing with the very poor entrepreneurial record of Africa and Ghana and Africa
I'm sure we'll get to speak more about that. Yeah. I want to know you a little more. I know we talk about you every time we mention Chief Andani. We're talking about either Stanbic. We're talking about someone who was at the Association of Bankers.
Yes, that's right.
And all of that. But can we get to know who you are exactly? Apart from all the glory and all the big things we know you've achieved.
Yeah.
Where did the life of the young Alhassan Andani start from?
Well, yes, so my life started in a little village near Tamale called Bamvim. Okay. That's where I was born, to the royal chief of Bamvim at the time, who was also a teacher. So I started my life in Bamvim. Then my father moved on to Sanaragu, which is another chieftaincy where he went to occupy, and I continued primary school in Sanaragu. Then went on to Ghana Secondary School, Tamale, where I did my O-levels from 1973 to 1978. Then I came to Tamale Secondary School to do my A-levels from 1979 to 1980. And then entered University of Ghana, supposed to have graduated in 1983. But those were difficult days with Jerry Rollins chasing everybody around. So we graduated in 1984, and that was my first degree. And then I moved on to do my national service at the then Social Security Bank, where I started my banking career in development finance.
That's a quick run through your life.
Yeah.
But I want to imagine there are the stories from your growing up.
Yeah.
Maybe something you've never mentioned anywhere, because I've read quite a number of things about you online. I've watched videos, but maybe I haven't heard stories about Chief Andani as a little boy, maybe secondary school, growing up. You were royal. But what was life like for you? Any memories?
Yeah. Look, I mean, I think for me, as I reflect on my growing up, it's probably was the kind of life I was being prepared for. So I grew up in a big home. As I said, my father was a chief, and in that house, everybody is treated equally. So really, we didn't have the opportunity to call him daddy. Everybody called him chief in our local language, nah, So that was just how you're brought up. And now even reflecting, even though I had elder brothers who were quite well placed, now I mean we're just allowed to run around like every other ordinary kid without pants on, and just running around as young kids until probably when you are going to primary school, then you can have some shorts around your waist, but bare-chested running around throwing stones and climbing trees. So that was my youth, and it was quite tough. And I always say that I actually wore my first slippers when I went to secondary school. And we looked after our pets.
Was that a normal thing at the time?
It was normal. It was normal, and as I said, it was just part of growing up. If it is shoes, I'm sure my dad could provide me shoes. I had elder brothers who were already medical doctors; they could provide shoes, but they just subtracted all of that and allowed you to grow. So that was part of it. And I mean, as I reflect now, I think that was just part of setting you up for what challenges you will face. Because today, even as I sit where I sit, I still look after people in the villages walking barefooted. That's it. So you can relate, even as you've moved on. You can relate to what the situation is. So that's the story to secondary school. And secondary school was quite enjoyable. I loved reading. I was a quiet person. I'm sure my mates will agree that. But those in my circle would always know that I was very debative. I was quite debative and will challenge every view. But outside that circle, I was pretty quiet.
I see.
Then I came to sixth form, was a bit more just growing, maturing, and getting ready for university. So, and Tamale Secondary School and Ghana Secondary School are like, first rivals. So moving from Ghana School to, or we used to call it Ghana College, into Tamale Secondary School was quite a challenge where, I used to be called a Russian, so the Tamaskans were the originals and everybody else coming was a Russian. But we survived.
I see.
We survived,
So at what point did you, of course, decide that you wanted to do what you did? Economy, what was that something you dreamt about, to go into the area of economics?
It is, because I actually did physics, chemistry, maths at A-levels. So to switch over to finance and economics was a deliberate act. I mean, the final years of my university, second final, we did a lot of development finance. And the whole subject of development finance actually intrigued me. It was an element of economics that I felt was a bit more practical in my young head, and I could appreciate what it was to try and take an idea, put resources together, model what the future would look like, make assumptions, and implement and measure to deliver. So it was actually in my final year of the university that I made a pitch that I would want to go into banking. And fortunately, I was posted to SSB. And SSB was set up, the Social Security Bank was set up as a development bank. And at that time, Ghana had a structured financial system. We had development finance institutions, we had commercial banks, and of course, you had the development banks or merchant banks. So I was in SSB where, at that time it was largely development finance, even though we had a burden retail business. And in the development finance unit, that's where I actually cut my teeth into banking. And I always tell people that SSB trained me, because really understanding banking, corporate business, clients, what the economy looks like, how it impacts every sector of the economy, and how you can understand what the macro is and use the micro to run your business. That's really where it all began.
And in that sector, you more or less achieved it all. You went from the lowest to the highest. And I read somewhere that by the time you're even leaving Stanbic, for instance, what you took over having 3 branches, you left with about 34.
Well,
how were you able to do all of that?
No, I mean, look, with great humility, I mean, Standard Bank is a great institution, is 100 plus, probably one of the oldest actual indigenous banks in Africa. And so the bank has history, the bank had capital, the bank had resources, the bank had people and talent. So mine was just to take a franchise in an economy that the group was very interested in. At the time, we're looking to be large. Standard Bank was very large in South Africa, and largely the SADC zone. So they were looking to grow significantly into a major tier bank in West Africa. So I was given the Ghana piece. So there was a huge push from the group in terms of all the resources that were required. So my piece was to put together the team and to understand the economy, sectionalize the economy, and then land all the group structures in the country.
Do you remember the meeting you had that led you to Stanbic? That meeting where you met and maybe you spoke with the people from South Africa. What did you tell them in that meeting?
Well, yes, it was interesting because I was with Barclays. I'd moved, I was at Barclays in South Africa working in the, what we call non-presence countries. So I was basically providing coverage work, corporate coverage work in countries for Barclays where we didn't have a fiscal presence. And I had actually moved from Barclays Ghana as Deputy Managing Director and Executive Director Corporate Banking. So, where I had been from 2000 to 2005, 2006, I went to South Africa. So when I was asked to come, I was engaged by Standard Bank. Well, they invited me, the CEO for Africa, and I think that was the regional CE for West Africa. It's like, invited me for coffee. And we had coffee, Then I was working in, Barclays had just taken over ABSA. So we had moved from our offices in uptown Sandton to the city. And I was in a street called Anderson. So, I was invited over to Simon Street, where Standard Bank has their head office buildings. And we had coffee, and then they told me, they wanted me to, consider joining Standard Bank. I was quite enthusiastic because I thought it was something within the SADC region or within South Africa. But it didn't take long before they kind of told me they wanted to bring me back to Ghana. It was a bit of a shocker because,
you were getting used to the...
I knew what Stanbic was here then, probably just, at that time really, 2 branches and an agency. And I was Deputy Managing Director of Barclays and, could have actually come back, if I wanted to the Barclays job. But they said this is what they wanted. I reflected on it, and I was a bit taken aback, but they gave me the encouragement and actually shared with me the vision. For me, what drives me is vision. I need a compelling vision, that kind of just makes the juices flow and gives you the impetus to push ahead. So
it wasn't really about the challenge. Did you not feel too challenged? From what you're telling me, and that you knew the system or the terrain better there, and you knew how the bank here was. Did you not feel too challenged? Like too much of a big challenge that this was going to be for you to even surmount?
Well, yes, and the challenge was really where the excitement was. Because as I said, this was probably Africa's largest bank, but very unknown in Ghana. It was quite big. When I say Africa, the indigenous Africa, of course, Barclays was there, but drawing all their strength from the UK, Standard Chartered was there, but one of the big African banks at the time, and still today, is Standard Bank. So, and they were not very, present in Ghana. So yes, it was a challenge, but a challenge that I was very confident we could work together and deliver. And say what, I think we delivered it.
I have a few questions I'll ask you about the economy and how every one of us can get some tips and nuggets around how to handle our financial lives. But when we come back from the break, I'll pose that question to you and you give me an answer to that. I'm still here with Dr. Alhassan Andani, and he's now the founder and executive chairman of LVS Africa. We'll be back shortly. Welcome back. This is still the Lowdown here on Ghanaweb TV. My guest is Dr. Alhassan Andani. I was wondering just before we went on to the break, do you have hobbies?
Oh, I do.
You're a busy man.
I have hobbies. I love to read.
Okay.
I used to play golf until I had a very bad shoulder.
Oh.
But yeah, and I love football. I watch football.
What's your favorite? Arsenal?
Arsenal is my club.
Well, people say Arsenal supporters are, what they say about them.
Well, I support Arsenal, so I want to practice patience.
Well, that's what every Arsenal fan will tell you. That
when we are winning, we are patient. When we are losing, we are patient. But we are always in the top. So
that's interesting. I see.
We're never out of the top.
I see. But have you played soccer yourself?
I played football when I was younger.
Okay.
When I was younger, yes.
I see.
Yeah.
Food, any favorites? What's your best meal?
Oh my! I'm a Dagomba man, so my toes are filled with dry okra soup would always be number one.
Wonderful. Now let's talk some other weightier matters.
Yeah.
The economy is a big subject now. We're all talking about how bad or not the economy is, and people will tell you that depending on where you're sitting or from which side of the coin you are at, you would want to say either we're doing well or not. But I want us to glean from your experience. You have handled issues to do with the economy or money for so long, and you use strategies around that. You mentioned earlier how you like to work with a vision and all of those things. I want us to begin from there. First of all, what are some of the things that financial nuggets that you have driven your life that you think can be of help to just about anyone?
I think if we bring it down to basics, is liquidity and solvency. At all times, be sure that you're solvent, i.e., you're building a net asset position, or you're building assets and liabilities that gives you a net positive position, which is under your control. That net positive, which is your net asset, is completely under your control. That's number one. Number two, at all times, whether you're a company, country, you've got to avail yourself adequate liquidity, because bankruptcy is not necessarily, sometimes when you just don't have the liquidity, you may have all the net assets, but you don't have the liquidity, you can be in trouble. So I would always say watch that. And of course, it comes back basically to just how much you earn and how much you spend. That's entirely your discretion. What you earn and what you spend is entirely your discretion. Again, whether it's at the personal level, the corporate level, or the national level. To spend more than you earn is just a recipe for disaster anytime.
Is that how people can reduce, for instance, things like debt?
Yes, so debts are not necessarily bad, and I mean, for a banker like me, debt is my stock in trade. But I always make sure that the debt you take is value accretive. You take 100 CDs in debt and you can generate 200. Pay me back my 120 CDs in profit and then we keep rolling. So it's about being focused with debt and taking it to solve problems that are value accretive. What I mean is generating your return over and above the cost that you have put into it.
When I asked you earlier about how or what launched you into the field you're in, you mentioned how it was something you're looking forward to. It seems like today, I'm talking about generations from my age below. A lot of people don't seem to really know where they are driving towards. There's a lot of internet sensation. People are doing one or two things like that. But when it comes to professional careers, seems to be a little gap in there. You're a father, I'm sure maybe your grandfather.
Yes.
What have you identified as some of the things that are holding back from the younger generations, maybe pursuing things that are lifelong?
Well, look, if I look back, I always say that for me, wealth starts with having a great idea, which idea you can transform into some product or service for solutions targeted at clients that you can over time improve and continue to serve and give more and more customer satisfaction. That's it. But most of us, especially in our part of the world, go to school, just acquire basic stuff, come and start a career as an employee. Now, if the economy is expanding and many more people are creating those ideas and transforming those ideas into companies, then yes, there will be opportunities. But we haven't a growing section, of us just coming out as employees, looking for jobs that are non-existent. And that can be tough. And for me, what I haven't seen is really that expansion. If you look at all the growing economies, even let's go to Asia, where we literally started in terms of Ghana, where we started our independence and our economy with the likes of Singapore, Malaysia, and all of that. If you look at the number of companies, viable companies that has been set up in those parts of the world compared to what we have here, clearly it will tell you that they've set up more, bigger, not just global companies, so they're able to spread their people, and even global companies come into their own country. So there are opportunities. So yes, it's about the structure of the economy, which is very, very important, that we should create more productive units rather than more consumption units. We have a lot more consumption units, whether it's our governments that are just consuming or households that are just consuming. And then what comes to us naturally is agriculture, which is also not very well organized. It's still very peasant if you compare our agriculture in this part of the world to what pertains everywhere else. Whatever we do is not at the optimal levels, and that would have been the first engine to crank everything else. So I think, yes, people must get a little bit more focus on the fiscal side of the economy. What can we really do and trade internally and externally for a more sustainable income? More sustainable existence, and contribute, to the total output of goods and services, not just in Ghana, but across the world.
You studied a little of agric in school.
Yes.
Are we not exploring that area too much? Do you think that Ghana could have maybe gained so much more from the area of agriculture that we are not?
No, agriculture in Ghana is a joke. Agriculture in Ghana is a joke. If today, and I can challenge the poultry farmers, if I put poultry farmers together and say, I need 20,000 dressed birds a day, dressed, 20,000 per day, I'm sure they will have a challenge. 20,000. Yes, we can have 10,000 birds at Christmas or Easter, but that's not how to do business. Every day people are eating, and birds must be there, or fish must be there, mutton must be there on consistent basis. Nobody is figuring out how much of it that we consume per day, per week, per month, and what kind of structure should we put in to produce that. We are all very seasonal. So we have not really, as it were, captured, or we have not really used technology and skills to cultivate agriculture in such a way that it serves our daily, weekly, monthly needs. We just follow the rain, and everybody, if the rain is good, we have a bumper harvest, poor storage. We have not even thought about how to preserve, and a lot of wastage. Then we go back into a lean season, then the rains come again. Whether it's crops, whether it's animals, whether it's tree crops, we leave everything to chance, and that's, and the evidence is there. We all saw the cultural development of China, the cultural development of places like Ukraine. They're not deep. They're not older than Ghana's economy. So it is just about focus. It's about putting the science and organization into production on a consistent basis. But there's a lot more talk around policy in agriculture than a real action in agriculture. Yeah.
I see. Now, you've been in the bank, so maybe I can ask you this question. And just because you mentioned the poultry industry, for instance, there are people who talk about loans or investments, getting money to pump into their businesses like that. What would you say? Are there avenues enough for them, especially when it comes to the financial institutions, for people to get what they want, to be able to push into their businesses and to reap the needed benefits and then pay back? Because a lot of people complain about such things.
Yeah, I think what people do is just one piece of it, probably the cash part of it. No. But I say credit readiness. What is credit readiness? What have you done personally that any third party can trust you with resources? What have you done as an enterprise that in a third party, and think about credit worthiness, even yourself putting money into your own business, you are an outsider into that business. How has the company structured itself to be trusted to keep your money and return it? That's what people don't. And so, as we say, an idea is just a beginning. Now you got to translate the idea into product, and the product will have different lines to it. How do I organize it in such a way that I can produce it? Raw materials are consistent, my production is consistent, my pricing is, it's kind of scalable, depending upon cost, and my clients can, in a very organized manner, in a repetitive manner. But most people just have an idea, they have not actually organized it into a proper, engine to be repetitive in what you do, and then they're rushing for cash. You're not credit worthy. You're not credit ready. Credit readiness is not just being able to go and dig up a few cassavas and come to the market. No. How do you ensure that that cassava you are digging up is going to be available over a long period of time, that your clients appreciate the quality and you know what they want, when they want it, in what quantities they want it? This is careful thinking. Everything that you do, you got to be very careful, methodical, and build it. But most people in this part of the world are a little bit more erratic. Sometimes they can even start very well, but just lose focus. And something that may have started as credit ready, suddenly, because you are not focused, you start to use company money as though it's your own pocket money to build houses, to buy cars, and then you are now richer than the company is collapsed, they come after you, and you've lost everything. And then we go all over again. So I agree that, money is just one element, or bank credit is one element, but credit readiness is a whole spectrum that we need to let people understand how people get credit.
All right. What's your assessment of the banking sector today? You rose all the way to the top of even the association that overlooks banks in this country. What would you say is your assessment of the work of banks, whether they are indigenous or they are foreign-based banks?
Look, I would say that the banking in Ghana has been absolutely resilient, especially in the last 10 years. Banking has gone through a lot. We have gone through, all the asset quality reviews. We've gone through where some banks have actually either collapsed or have to be saved. We've gone through the most crunching of it is the domestic debt exchange program. Has really been, very tough for banks. Just keeping liquidity going, making sure that they stay solvent and still meeting customer needs. That's a very tough. And in fact, I tell my colleagues, because we just slipped out before DDEP happened. So I tell my colleagues that they're having such a unique experience that those of us who spend all of our lives, and I spent all of my life in banking, I joined in '84 and I left in 2004, 2020. It's a long period, so, but the experience of the current crop of leaders of the banks in the last 3-4 years has been phenomenal. And I think the industry has been very resilient. We just have to continue. And the first time we have actually seen a government default. Ghana government cannot pay its bills. And because it cannot pay its bill and it's such a huge systemic element of the economy, companies that serve government cannot pay their bills. Investors who give money to government cannot serve their bill. And all of that washes back to the banks. All of that, whether it's a bank that cannot pay or a depositor who put his money in a bond that has not got the money, or a contractor who is taking money to all of that. The government's non-payments is in the books of the banks. The investors who put money in the bonds, their businesses in the bank, the company. So just imagine. So that's really the cooker plate on which everything is. And still, we have absolutely no problem in terms of meeting customer needs. I dove my heart for what I would call a very resilient industry, very resilient banking industry.
Now, LVS Africa, what exactly does LVS Africa do?
I think LVS Africa is, just to answer the question I talk about credit worthiness or credit readiness, is to say, how do we create enduring enterprises? How do we create enduring enterprises that I said, Standard Bank is today probably 160 plus years. It was started it was started in somewhere in South Africa, the Eastern Cape there, with very enthusiastic entrepreneurs. But they have survived for 160 years. Tell me, how many companies do you know in Ghana that have survived 160 years, or 100 years, or 50 years? And the last time I had a conference and I asked that question, it was only one hand that went up. Some family business that moved from father to son and now transitioning to grandparents and grandchildren. But what LVS Africa is about is just to let entrepreneurs understand the whole dynamics of building, giving life, independent life to the what they call their own company or enterprise. Because I keep saying, enterprises are more enduring than human beings. Okay. You know, after 60 years, you retire. The enterprise is only just getting matured. Yeah. They can always get a better CEO, they can always get a better CFO, they can always get a better marketing director, a better HR. So as you evolve, so you can see the enterprise. But you, if you sat on it as the owner, after 80 years, really, can you keep things going? So you would, but enterprises don't die like that. So what is the trick in giving life to enterprises so that they can continue to serve? You know, and yeah, whether it's the Rockefellers, those companies are still alive. 7 great-great-grandchildren, 7 foundations, but the original founders are gone. How did they achieve it that Africa is not able to achieve it? So for me in LVS Africa, my big trust is to see and talk to entrepreneurs, work with them to see how we can put structures into their companies to isolate their lives or take their lives away from the life of the company and let them understand that that company will be there to serve their great-great-grandchildren long after they are gone. The companies have life. So LVS Africa is about focusing on the life of the company. We call the enterprise doctors. Okay. What is it that puts this company together so that it grows consistently?
Okay. Yeah. Of all your personal achievements, which one of them would you say is the one you're most proud of?
Well, I would say at least when I left work, I still had a family that was very loving. Okay. In spite of the times spent traveling and working, we still have a home, you know, where everybody feels belonging. That for me, that's very important. That's very on the family side. I think we managed to pull ourselves together. But in terms of corporate, I'd say one of my most significant is what me and my colleagues were able to build with Stanbic Bank. I mean, it's an achievement that all of us who've been there, you know, and are very proud of. You know, and just to say that this was not done by me singularly, I had a unique opportunity of being the leader, but I've worked with real great people, real great people, you know, in and outside of Ghana. You know, and so that's a huge thing that you can turn back and look at and say, for me, in terms of enterprise development, there's nothing that can take Standard Bank back. It can only go up and up.
All right. Yeah. Do you miss being at work like?
Absolutely not. I keep telling people that I have never ever felt gotten up in the morning and felt. No, because my job was already solving problems. You know, dealing with client problems, dealing with staff problems. You know, whether it was balance sheet, income statement, it was just about solving problems. And therefore, for me, it hasn't changed. Every day I get up, it's one problem on that, and I'm quite positive. So I like to go out and solve problems. So I haven't missed that kind of routine. I call the bank more routine, but now it's less routine, but very rigorous, which I'm enjoying.
And I'm most grateful. Thank you for sharing all these nuggets with us and at least giving us some insights into your personal life. We hope that some of these things get out there and people can use these things to shape in their lives. But thank you.
Thank you.
For speaking to us here on Ghanaweb TV.
Thank
you. That's been our guest, now Dr. Alhassan Andani. He is currently the founder and executive chairman of LVS Africa. I mean, for many years he was at Stanbic Bank. We know the many laurels that he chalked there. Thank you for joining us on the Lowdown here on Ghanaweb TV. My name is Echi Atisu. Remember to subscribe to our YouTube channel. Look for Ghanaweb TV. Subscribe, like, and also click on the notification button so that you're notified the next time we put up a video. Until another time, be kind to another.